Alright, today we're going to tie Sculpin Sass. I tried recording this video once already and it was a major failure. I got my lighting completely wrong and it just looked downright bad. In the vise so far, all I've done, this is my rig. I've got a round eye shank in the shank tool here from Aquaflies. And then I've got about an inch of junction tubing to a size 4 Ahrex trailer hook. You could either do dubbing for this first step. I'm just gonna go the easy route and use some of this cactus chenille. This is size large in orange. I'm just gonna tie that in right at the back. Make sure we're not trapping any fibers down. And we're gonna do a few wraps of this just to cover up the back part of this hook, and it's going to be our bump that props up the next loop that we make. So that's about 3 wraps. Get through there, tie it off. Trim it out. So now that we have our dubbing loop put together, we're gonna actually assemble our materials for the loop. We're gonna start with a base of red ice dub, and we're just going to get all the fibers lined up. We don't want it super thick. And we're gonna put that in. If you have one of the Aquaflies composite loop cards from Jerry French, we're gonna put it in about 60-40, just as a nice base. We are going to grab Predator wrap. This is black and red barred Predator wrap. Real sweet color. For some reason, really hard to find. I ended up having to buy this off eBay because I could not find it in stock anywhere else. And we're gonna cut about 1/4 inch of the braid. So we have something like this. Try and keep things a little tidy here. We'll cut that off. And then we will fold it over on itself to create a loop like that. And I don't want to cut it right at 50-50. I want to have some different sized fibers, so we'll cut it off at an angle a little bit. And we're going to lay that in 60-40. You can do this however you like. I just like grabbing little pinches of it at a time, and I'll show you the loop once it's completely put together before we spin it up. Had a little bit of excess, that's okay. Then we're gonna add some of the Froden, it's basically angel hair, and we're gonna do the same thing, line everything up, trim it in half, and I'm just gonna lay this out. I don't think I'm gonna have enough length to cut it perfectly, so we're gonna cut it at an angle again. And then we're just going to come in with more red ice dub. We're just going to put this over the top, make it real thin, just where we plan to tie that in, just to sandwich all those materials we just laid out together. I'm gonna come in here with my chopsticks, just clean this up a little bit. So we have something like that. And I'm just going to put that in like we laid it out on the card, about 60-40. So we have something like that. Just make sure everything's going the right way. Pull out anything that's not working well, and then we're going to spin that up. And then we'll brush this out very well. Get all those trapped fibers undone. So we've got a nice clean loop here. We're just going to wet that and get all our fibers pushed back, facing the same direction. And then we're going to wrap that forward. Getting our first wraps very close to that cactus chenille. Try not to trap any fibers while you wrap. Then cut this out. Then I like to take a toothbrush or a comb, or you can use anything just to brush that out. Make sure you don't have anything trapped. You take something a little pickier here, pick through that. And then we're just gonna put this back on here, trap all that stuff down. We're just gonna use orange. And I want these, when I'm picking feathers here, I don't want to use super long stuff. This isn't gonna go super far back, but like probably if I had to guesstimate, I'd say around 20 or so. That's a lot. Let's pull a few of those out. So we have something like that. And if you want, you can kind of stack these so that they're not all the exact same length. We don't want them to be all the same length. We want some variety. Use your thumb and just mash it in to spread those all around the hook. Doing some looser wraps so that I can still kind of splay these out, and once I have them all where I want them, I'm going to do some tighter wraps. And seal them in there. And I'll just wet those down, keep them out of my way. You just want those to extend just past our dubbing loop that we created earlier. Next, we are going to add in some rubber legs. Take two of this color. This is Amber Gold Flake. And then we will also take two of these clear barred orange hairline rubber legs. So we have them all lined up nicely. It's a good time to trim any of the awkward tag ends. You could also leave them. Some people just leave them in there. They catch the water a little differently and they might move a little bit better for you. I haven't really played around with that too much to see how true that is. But now we might just taper these so we have one of each color longer than the other. And then we'll find our halfway point, which is pretty much where we're holding it, and we'll tie this directly in on my side, seal that, grab the other 4 and bring this over. And secure that in. Next, we're going to go in with our Flashaboo. We're going to use 2 colors here. We're going to use gold and copper, although I'd argue this kind of looks a little more orange to me. And we're going to grab about 5 of each, and that's pretty long. So we're just going to trim this in half if we can. And then we're just going to taper these. So we've got some different length in here, and we're just going to tie this right over the top. And then pull back our extras and secure them in. Then we're gonna take saddle hackle. I like this contrasty black and white with this kind of rusty looking color combo. And we just want to look and see how long these guys are going to be. And I want them extending just past my flash and rubber legs. And we're going to tie those in somewhat on the top. And just take your time here so that you set them in the right spot. And then just to make sure that the feather's nicely secured, I like to wrap it in over itself. These stems on these specific saddle hackles are very easy to pull, so I just can pluck them out of there. Just line them up so they're roughly the same. They don't need to be exactly the same. And we'll secure this guy in. Oops. Sometimes they can be a little tricky to secure in right. Last 2 steps here, which are 2 dubbing loops. You could combine them into one if you want to. So now we're going to come in with some fox. I'm using this cool reddish brown, and we don't need a ton here. Something like that. And we'll just comb out any short fibers, and then I will just pull this apart and lay this out on my table so that I can use the guard hairs and get them somewhat in the same length. Where am I? We don't want a ton of bulk here because it's pretty easy to overdress this part of the fly. It gets super bulky, and then it just doesn't look like it doesn't look very great in the water. So we're gonna go with something like that. And we are gonna have a little bit of the fox sticking out of our loop here. I just messed up my thread. Boom, just like that. You could use some wax here if you want. We're not using a ton of hair, so usually it doesn't have too much of a problem catching. Spin that up nice and tight, and then brush this out. I'm just gonna spin that up, make sure everything's nicely trapped. We're just gonna wet this down. Everything's facing the same direction. And then we're gonna palmer this around, making sure we're not trapping anything. Trap that in. Cut that loop out. And we're just going to take our toothbrush here, comb everything back, make sure nothing's trapped in there. And we're gonna do our last loop, which is just gonna be rabbit. And I tend to go way too thick with the rabbit here as well, so we're gonna try and not do that. And I'm gonna be using, just to create a nice little dark head, we're gonna use crosscut rabbit in dark brown. And make sure when you use this stuff that you go through, you can see all this extra hair coming off. And then we'll just try and line these up so that when we put them in our loop, we can just have them barely hanging out so that we get that full length. Just take your time here. Get them all lined up and then spin them. Brush this out really well. Moisten those hairs so that they're all going the same direction. Makes it a lot easier to tie these in. And then we'll palmer this forward. Alright, so of course my camera dies right when we're finishing this thing. But we just finished palmering everything forward there. We are going to finish this. I'm just going to get this wet so that nothing is in our way for finishing this fly. I just like to do 2 whip finishes. Pull that tight. And then we're going to trim this off. Then you can take off your keeper there. And I just like to brush everything out really well. And the last part of this fly, just to complete it, all we have to do, take our nippers here. Depending on the shank length you use, you're really not using a lot of shank here, so you could probably get away with pretty short. I don't know where that went. That's going to be fun to find with the vacuum cleaner. You can use a pretty short shank for this fly. But that is it. That is Sculpin Sass. Flashy, snazzy little baitfish pattern. You can tie this up in a bunch of cool colorways. It looks really cool. Winter steelhead colors, pink, purple, blue, black. I have not fished this fly yet, so I can't say if it's a winner or not, but I'm excited to see how this thing swims. And if you like it, try tying one up and let me know how it goes. It's a work in progress pattern, so some things might change on it, some things might stay the same, but for right now, that is Sculpin Sass. Thanks for watching, guys.